Hello everyone, thanks for joining my presentation. My name is Amy Metcalfe and I'm at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. The title of my talk is Seeing Academic Capitalism, the Photo Essay as Critical Counter-Narrative. I'm situated presently on the unceded traditional ancestral territory of the Musqueam people and in the city now known as Vancouver on the campus of the University of British Columbia. I'll start with just a quick definition of what is a photo essay. Sometimes these are called visual essays, and that incorporates quite a few other types of visual materials, but a photo essay is in general using Heng's 2020 definition, is a compilation of photographs and text arranged in a way that communicates one's research findings and or fieldwork in new and significant ways. And one of the things that several conditions that he describes is that it should contain images, and in this case he's talking about photographs, and two, it should be oriented towards one's research, so not necessarily just photos of anything, but something that you are intensely involved in studying. Optimally, he says, it helps to connect the reader to theoretical frameworks and eventually arguments. And these two conditions lead to the third, that images should be used and arranged in meaningful ways and not relegated to mere illustrations where convenient. Using Powell's definitions of the visual essay, he also describes that it can consist of any types of images or visual representations. So it could be photographic or non-photographic. And it could also make use of pre-existing images, so things that you may have found in archives, for instance. But he does say that in his view, there should be some verbal contextualization, so it probably should be accompanied by text, and he acknowledges that this is not necessarily an agreement with other scholars who use the photo essay method. Just a brief history of photo essays as they relate to higher education. There were some early photo essays in Life magazine in the 1930s, which was one of these publications that really championed and really initiated the concept of a photo essay. The photographer Alfred Eisenstadt had gone to campuses and had taken images of, for instance, this particular one of young women at Vassar College in the United States. And it sort of started a larger conversation of women in higher education, their role, particularly these elite colleges, what kind of future these women would have, what types of activities they did on campus. So it was a bit sensationalized, as you might imagine, but there definitely began this connection between the photo essay and higher education. In my own work, I've been looking at the photo essay as a research product, as a way of understanding particular things that I'm seeing in the academic environment. Today I'm going to talk with you about three particular studies that have been recently published and one that is in progress. The first is a study that I called This is Football, and you can see that phrase in the image on the right. This is football in a small letters going up the stairs. This particular photo essay was specifically about visualizing academic capitalism at the athletic stadium, and it's also situated at the University of British Columbia. This particular study is a documentation of the football stadium that is now in an environment that will likely be turned into condos. And so it becomes this sort of contest between those who would like the Canadian university to be more oriented towards football, like its American counterparts, so that these areas of campus would become much more lucrative, and in ways that we might monetize that connection between campus spaces and particular types of athletic activities. And this football stadium is sort of caught in between because football is not a very big thing at UBC, as it's not in most Canadian universities, and yet there's this push towards wanting to have more housing on campus, more market housing on campus, as well as more rental housing for students, which has become very apparent during this COVID-19 time period. Housing is a big business for most universities. It's a large part of their revenue. So in this photo essay, you may see that what I'm doing in a lot of these ways is using the captions very specifically. This was a technique that Powell's talks about, where it relates to the image, but also then to the thematic or in this case, theoretical framework. So the gates F and G, you know, where you would go down with your ticket to find your seat, I used that those letters to create the title for this photo, Failing Grade, because this particular building had a seismic failing grade, which is in some ways convenient because that then puts it in need of being either renovated or replaced by a much bigger, nicer, and better located football stadium that would allow for this condo development to maximize its revenue potential. In the next essay that I'm speaking of, this one is called Witnessing Indigenous Dispossession and Academic Arboricide, Visual Autoethnography as Anti-Colonial Didactic. This was in a journal called Visual Arts Research. And here, looking at this area of campus that has become condos, there are quite a few areas on the edge where that forest that UBC is well known for being situated within, it's kind of carved out gradually on the edges. So seeing these stumps emerge as areas of campus would then be clear cut to allow for more condo development, market-based and rental housing. So here are some of those images, and two more as I was looking at ways to really emphasize the type of photographic and aesthetic experiences, as well as the theme that I was expressing, which was this, you know, that tree death, you know, like that there's this tree crime happening on the edge of campus somewhere in the shadows. The other essay that I've recently published, this was in the journal Studies in Higher Education. This one is called Visualizing the COVID-19 Pandemic Response in Canadian Higher Education, an extended photo essay. Here, the article links to my website that has the full photo essay, but I was able to have several images within the article itself. And this is basically images of empty classrooms looking in the window during the first stages of lockdown, when we were shut out of our offices, which is still the case, you know, more than a year later. We're not able to be in our spaces on campus. But as I was taking these photos, I was realizing that I could see the outside being reflected in, and it just gave me this feeling of that reversibility of being inside out, turned inside out. You know, we're kind of turned out into the campus environment and locked out of our own buildings. So that is some of that essay. Here are a few other images as I was looking at signage and changes in the campus environment, ways that that we're seeing the academic spaces reversed in a way, and the UBC Life building, which is a student space, and this mural here that says the best thing in life is life, and yet there's no one in the building, right? Finally, this is a work in progress, which is looking at advertisements, these physical sort of placard advertisements on the edge of campus in the area that is more condos and rental housing that generates revenue for the university, and basically looking at it as it changes from this was taken a few years ago, and then last year these trees were cut down at the edge of, this is essentially the same trees in a different different state. This is an area that will be a high-rise condo that will be market-based housing. And perversely, the name of this particular housing project is called the Conservatory, which I'm not really sure what they think they're conserving here, because it's certainly not the trees. And yet you can see in the banner that they put up on the chain link fence, they're really projecting this concept of being right near the forest, which obviously it is. You can see the photo, excuse me, but they had to remove the trees in order to do that, right? So, and to top it off, there's this tagline of refreshing apartment living at UBC, which the only way that you can have it be refreshing, I guess, is to cut down all the trees. And that doesn't really, to me, make any sense at all. But that's the kind of the world that we're living in now, I guess. So in summary, this photo essay format is permitting a way of interrogating this campus environment that just looking at revenue sheets or budgets doesn't, although that is also part of the process of writing. So in the writing up, then there will be more of what we might call the traditional higher education framing, but it's then situated and interspersed with the images, not as illustration, but as a way to really sit with the concepts and the meaning of the concepts in a different way. So I look forward to your feedback during the Q&A period. Thank you for your time.